morning. Good morning. Welcome to Detroit in Black and White, our Saturday morning's edition. We want to thank you guys for making Detroit in Black and White the show that it is. I'm going to first introduce our co-host, and then I'm going to acknowledge those that are waiting for us on these YouTube streets. First, I'm going to introduce Mr. Allan Lengel. He's back from the Sunshine State. He got a little tan. We call it Eastside Al. Eastside Al of Deadline Detroit and the week that was. Good morning, Allan.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Yep. And then we're next going to I'm introducing my dog.
All right.
Sometimes the voice of reason, right?
Sometimes.
Rarely. Sometimes the voice of reason. The former chief of the Trenton Police Department, our downriver brother, Jim Nardone. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Allan. Good morning, Vanessa. Good morning, Janet, Duela, and everybody else that's tuning in. Thank you all for being a part of this show.
So they already know the assignment. Y'all know what we want you to do. First of all, good morning. Second of all, we want you to like, subscribe, and share. We want you to tell all your friends about what? The greatest show on these YouTube streets. You can catch us on all social media platforms. And if you want to weigh in, if you want to talk about your outrage or there's something that you want to talk about, listen, you could take your phone, put your camera on that QR code that's in the corner, and you could join us, or you could join us in the comments. Now, if you don't want us to see your face, what you can do is just press audio. This is the Detroit Black and White has been around for quite some time. Adolph Mongo, the person who thought of Detroit Black and White, created Detroit in Black and White. We started on the radio, and we morphed into a podcast. So we want to thank every last one of you guys for weighing in. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys take it as I do a couple of household matters.
All right. I'll start. I just want. Last night we were talking about the arrest of Don Lemon and Georgia Fort, also journalists who were both arrested for really being journalists going in. There was a group of protesters, and I can tell you as a reporter, we get notified all the time, like, hey, we're having a protest, we're going to be doing this or that, just to let you know. They were obviously, ahead of time told that they were going to be people entering a church in Minneapolis where I guess the pastor was an ICE agent or something. And so protesters went in there and probably disrupted the service. And, I think there's probably, whatever. So, but they, the federal government is being so vindictive and really trying to tear down the press and the media. Went to a magistrate to try to get arrest warrant signed, and the magistrate said no, not enough evidence there. And so they went to a grand jury, which the grand juries, in DC, the grand juries are becoming a little bit more sophisticated and pushing back. In Minneapolis, go to a grand jury, they say, here's the crime. They say, okay, they gave, they indicted them. And so they were arrested, they were released. And I can tell you that both of them insist all they did was act as reporters. Georgia Fort said all I did was videotape the event. Don Lemon was interviewing people, I think, after the demonstration and stuff, and was recording that. And so I'm sure he'll have the best First Amendment lawyers who will probably go pro bono if they have to represent him, or media organizations.
He got enough money. He got enough paper. He got enough money from CNN.
Yeah. But I mean, I mean, look, these days, these lawyers, these First Amendment lawyers are charging, like, probably, the good ones in DC and stuff are probably charging $1,000 an hour, which turns out to be real money after a while, after a very short time, as you know, as a lawyer, So
you know what? If he pays a lawyer, let me say this: if he pays a lawyer, whatever it costs, guess what? It's going to be worth it for him, because This made his stock go up. He was unceremoniously booted from CNN. He started his own YouTube channel, and he
Right.
goes on all the time. I personally, I don't watch his page. I
Mhm.
watch his show on a regular basis. I don't, I don't have anything against him. I was just never. I'm not a fan or a foe. I'm just a is, and he's just a is for me. But you know, he has people that support him. I support him in the sense that you are trampling on First Amendment rights. And you know what? The media has the right to show whatever it is that they want to show. So this is going to be very interesting. He's not going to, if by chance there's a conviction, he's not going to do anything. It just gives him some street cred, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Go ahead, Jim.
I'm just reading. Good morning, Terry McCrimmon. Don Lemon was released without posting bond. Wonder if he can sue. Good morning, Kenneth Reed. A couple others. Jill Sheridan. Good morning to you, Jill. Hope you're warm. We're not. Dominique. We're going to break this cold here. Timothy. Janet Overall. If I missed you, Karen C. Stephanie Jackson. Thank you all for tuning in this morning. I just wanted to say this about that, and I'll be brief. They have the presumption of innocence.
Mm-hmm.
They have a right to a trial. They were charged. My biggest issue with the whole thing is the indignities forced upon them by the federal government, whether it's sitting outside their house or trying to embarrass them. I think that's just the wrong approach. You could have called them, said, "Hey, appear in court on this day. This is what we're going to do," but they didn't do it that way. It's wrong. It's a misdemeanor. It's not a big crime. There was nobody in danger of these two. Georgia Fort or Don Lemon was not a threat to the community, and they could have handled it a heck of a lot better. Thank you, Mr. 1213. New glasses.
I see that Kenneth Reed was saying Abby Lowell, and I'd forgotten Abby Lowell is his attorney, which I dealt with Abby Lowell as a reporter at the Washington Post, and I can tell you he is fierce. I mean, him and I went at it on the phone sometimes. He was fierce. But he's a great advocate for his clients, and he's had some of the top clients in DC who have gotten involved in whatever. So I think Don Lemon's in good hands, and I can't imagine that the case will go. I think it'll get tossed out.
And what about what Timothy or Kenneth? I'm sorry,
Right.
Kenneth says. They made a legend out of him, and that's what the government does. Things kind of backfire on you when you try and hurt somebody. Sometimes they become more relevant.
Yeah, Duela says sensationalism at its best. Absolutely. And like I said, his stock went up.
And what are
the
charges? Do we know? I mean, it's disorderly conduct, if nothing else.
It's simply violating the First Amendment rights of worshipers or some kind of conspiracy. I think it was conspiracy. I don't know if they're trying to tie him into the whole protest or whatever, but it's conspiracy and violating the First Amendment rights to worship.
So are they saying that because he came in there as a reporter, that he interrupt the service, the service that they were?
Yeah, he didn't interrupt it. He was covering the
saying, is that what they were saying? And the phone call happens to be, he's not just a minister, but he also happens to be ICE agent. Is that correct?
Right. So they were protesting. They were there protesting that. And he violated federal law during a protest about blah, blah, blah. The indictment named a total of 9 people, 7 protesters, Mr. Lemon, and a second journalist. So
let me ask you this, Allan and Jim. When he went in with his equipment, did that ask him to leave?
I don't know all the details, so
I don't see any evidence of that. I know that he talked to the minister, preacher, whoever it is, and I know that he made comments that I am not part of this. I am a journalist, and that's what I have an issue with. When he that was a smart move. He basically said, "I'm a journalist. I'm not part of this protest," and to me, that's enough.
Yeah.
Whether he was or he wasn't, he declared that he was a journalist on scene, and that should have probably led to him not being charged with anything.
Well, it would be interesting to know whether or not the minister said, you know what, okay, Mr. Journalist, that's fine, get the hell out of here. I wonder if that is part of the issue, because that to me makes a big difference. Okay, because basically you coming in my house, this is our church, and I'm asking you to leave, and you say, hey, I'm doing my job as a journalist. Okay, well, we're doing our job as worshiping, get the hell out of here. I'm just wondering if that is what happened, but we'll see.
But I think also my guess, and we're all speculating here.
Mhm.
My guess is he may have told the protesters to leave, not particularly saying we don't want the media here, get out media. The pastor David Easterwood he is an ICE official, and that was sort of the reason that they went in there. But so he's charged with conspiracy to deprive the congregants of the church of their rights and to interfere with religious freedom in a house of worship. That was, and like I say, a magistrate judge just said that's bullshit. You know, you're not charging him with that. And so, you know, the problem is, I mean, we see this, you know, down in Virginia, Alexandria, Virginia, they wanted to charge Letitia James, the Attorney General. In New York, they wanted to charge James Comey, the former FBI director, and the Trump appointed U.S. attorney said no, there's not enough evidence. They basically fired him, brought in their own person, indicted, and the case was thrown out anyway. So, I mean, we're wasting so many resources. There's so much crime out there, as you know, Vanessa. I mean, there's got to be a backup locally, and I know there's a backup federally. You know, the cases take forever to work through the system.
Yeah. So I'm looking up he's charged with freedom of access to clinic. It's called the FACE Act, and it was signed in 1994. It's a federal law prohibiting the use of force, threat of force, or physical obstruction to intimidate or interfere with anyone obtaining or providing reproductive health services, or, and there's a comma, or exercising religious freedom at a place of worship. It also protects against property damage to these facilities. So I think what they're hanging their hat on is the interference with someone exercising their religious freedom at a place of worship.
Right.
That's what.
But as a reporter, I mean, the protesters are the ones doing that. They're covering it. And like I say, we get notified. It doesn't mean we're part of a conspiracy. If somebody's protesting and says, hey, we're going to block traffic on I-75 to protest whatever, and we go out to cover it, are we going to get arrested for that? I mean, the people are doing that, are knowingly doing it, knowing they can get arrested for that violation. When they entered the church, you do a protest, you know there's a possibility you can get arrested. But
so here's the thing, though. So when you go to a place of worship, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, if you go into a place of worship, I'm going to a place of worship, and there's controversy going on. There's people standing outside of the church that I attend. I don't know if I necessarily feel comfortable with whether, you know, I'm the ICE agent or whatever. I feel comfortable with somebody coming in there with cameras and equipment to film what's going on. That could make people feel uncomfortable. I'm not saying I do have a problem with it, but I'm just saying this is how some people will look at it. Reporters don't usually go inside churches. You know, there are some places that you just don't go, where you don't go. That's like going to an AA meeting. You can't go into an AA meeting, you know, and disrupt these people holding their, you know, telling their worst secrets or whatever the case may be.
It's a public forum at church. A church service is usually a public forum where anyone can go. I mean, I've never seen. I'm talking about I'm Jewish, but I've gone to churches to cover stories, and I mean more orderly. Obviously, I
with a camera.
No, I didn't. I went with the notebook, and but you know, I understand your point. I'm not saying you're wrong in terms of people feeling like, you know, it's too invasive for them, but you know, it happens. Look, they did a protest inside. They were doing something potentially they could get arrested for. And I understand that, but the reporters, who are just witnessing it or whatever, I just think it's, I just think whatever. I mean, there's a balance between, the rights. We start arresting. Like I say, if there was something really truly criminal, like they said, we're going to throw smoke bombs and we're going to start shooting people, and the reporter said, "Oh, cool, yeah, we're going to come along and record that." I think there's some room there to charge them as as an accomplice. But something as innocent as, I mean, it's obviously
innocent, Allan. Was it really innocent?
Well, it's more than innocent. I mean, it's obviously they're raising a stink about it, this guy. And so they were probably willing to get arrested for doing that. Like I said, I got arrested twice on strike, knowing that I could probably get arrested. I was blocking the printing plant on the Detroit riverfront. Next time we were blocking the front entrance of the Detroit News. We were arrested for that, and we knew we were going to get arrested. In fact, they told us, either clear the door or you're going to get arrested. And, there were 21 of us, including Bishop Gumbleton, and, the head of the AFL-CIO and stuff, and city councilwoman, what's her name? But anyways, we were all arrested, but we were forewarned that we were going to get arrested. We knew it. And so these people knew it, but reporters, if somebody was there reporting on it, I wouldn't expect anyone to get, unless they were blocking the door.
Well, I will say this as someone who attends, I've been to churches where they ask people not to use their phone to video what's going on in church.
Sure.
People don't feel comfortable with cameras and that kind of thing. And if you see somebody writing down, if I go to church, oh, I see Vanessa Moss, she's sitting in the second pew. She has on block. It could make people feel uncomfortable. I'm just saying, again, I stated my position on this yesterday. We got a constitution, United States Constitution, and to trample on it, I have a huge problem with it. But there's a balancing there, like you said, Allan. You also have the right to practice whatever kind of religion that you want to practice, and you should be able to do that without any interference.
Right. Jay, it wasn't Kay Abbott. It was Miriam Mahaffey.
Miriam Mahaffey. And I think Vanessa put her lawyer hat on, and I don't know if everybody caught it, but I happened to catch it. So we probably should take a break in a minute, but I want to talk about this just for a second. Take a break and get Vanessa. Will you address some of our friends out there? But Vanessa mentioned, which I thought I really appreciated, where they asked to leave, and was Don Lemon asked to leave? Because we all know that in a trespassing situation, you can't. There's other elements other than being on the property. You have to be asked to leave, and if they weren't asked to leave, then it is no longer a trespass, right?
Absolutely.
And thank you for picking up on. I don't know if our viewers picked up on that. Should we take a break and then?
We should take a break.
Okay, I want to clarify that.
Allan, we'll come right to you. Okay.
I want to clarify the trust, but go ahead. We'll come back.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. Are you living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, or maybe you know someone who's in the same situation? The probate process may be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. We have several nonprofit partners who have free attorneys who can assist you. Contact our office, 313-224-5990, or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. Don't lose your family property. Some of these properties have been in the family for 4 or 5 generations. Contact us now. We're here to help.
We're back, Detroit in Black and White, our Saturday morning's edition. Adolph is not here today. He'll be joining us next week. But we were right in the middle of the conversation, and I think we're going back to Allan because Allan wanted to make a point.
I wanted to ask, I mean, when you say, and you guys are both familiar with local laws here, when somebody, and they may be different in Minnesota, but if somebody is trespassing and they're asked to leave, are you suggesting that it's a greater offense if they don't leave, even if they're just trespassing?
Ask your question again.
The question is, if somebody's, let's say they're trespassing, they're in a church, they've been asked to leave, and they say, no, we're just doing our job, whatever, and they say, no, we don't want you here. Does that escalate the trespassing charge because they are refusing?
Absolutely, I would think so, because we asked you to leave and you decided that you're going to stay.
But isn't it trespassing no matter?
It's an element.
It's trespassing no matter what.
It's an element.
People usually would say, hey, get the heck off my property, right? And if you don't, then guess what?
Then it's trespassing.
Here we go.
That's why there's signs, Allan, because so you're notified that you shouldn't be there. So if a guy has a sign outside of his house that says no trespassing, trespassers will be
solicitors.
arrested. So it is an element of trespassing in the state of Michigan, being told, knowing that you are trespassing, because people could be walking in a field and they may not know they're trespassing.
Right.
It's not trespassing until you tell them that they're trespassing.
But to escalate it from trespassing to, violating religious rights and all that kind of stuff, I mean, I think, I don't know. I don't think the case is going to go very far. And somebody mentioned that I don't think it's that unusual not to have post bond in federal court, particularly for something as minimal as that. The judges will have conditions sometimes, and I doubt there's many. They'll be like, no drinking, no, marijuana. You can't leave the state without permission or whatever. I doubt any of those conditions were set with Don Lemon.
So let's call a thing a thing. This is all very political, right? Don went in there because he's, listen, these protests, it's a good story. It's a hot story. Everybody's talking about the protesters in Minnesota. It's a hot story. So, I mean, this is what it is. And just like this charge, it is all political theater. And guess what? We all caught up in the protesters in Minnesota. We're caught up in ICE, which, by the way, is not, we all know this, Allan, right? ICE is not a new agency. Okay, ICE has been here forever. ICE has a presence here in Detroit, Michigan, okay? But we still have a whole lot of other things going on in this country. What about what the heck is going on with Venezuela and the president of Venezuela and all of that stuff? What the heck is going on with the current administrator talking about, hey, we're going to take over Greenland? All of these other things are going on, but we are so focused on this. And a lot of people in the comments are making comments about this very thing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I don't know if you got, I have a little video here. This is entertaining, I think. The question is the new Melania documentary by Netflix, which Bezos paid $70 million to make, and that is going to be like, I think Melania's gotten 20 million or 20 million plus for that, which amounts to a bribe because Amazon does a lot of business with the government. Here it is. It's going to be showing at local theaters here. And here's a trailer. I think it's kind of humorous, but here it is.
Current Minneapolis NAA.
That's not it. Let's see here. Oh, here it is.
Here we go again.
You can come in. Come on in. After us, legacy will be that of peacemaker.
Peacemaker in the fire. Beautiful. Together, with like-minded leaders, we have a voice. Is it safe?
It is safe.
Everyone wants to know. So here it is. Hi, Mr. President. Congratulations.
Did you watch it?
I did not. Yeah, I will see it on the news.
So it'll be showing at all the theater. I thought that last part is hysterical. The film is primarily about the second term in office and about 20 days leading up to the second election. At the end, I'm assuming he's saying his acceptance speech after victory, and he goes, "Did you watch?" And she goes, "No, I'll watch it on the news."
Well, I think it's very interesting that the tickets aren't selling. Nobody's going to the theater to say, to watch it. But listen, I'm gonna give props for props are due. Her fits be fitting, as we say. Her outfits, she stay fly. I love it. But nobody's buying tickets to watch this film. And when you say things like, Allan, you said how much was she paid?
I think she made over $20 million.
Okay, and you said that it was you think it was bribery?
It's a bribe, Bezos does business.
Pretty inflammatory.
Well, Bezos.
I thought we were advertising on our show. Is that what we were doing, Allan? Was that an ad for our show?
No. I think it's curious. It's going to be showing locally. It's in all the Imagine, MJR, so it's showing everywhere. I'm curious if people locally here are gonna go see it.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw somewhere where they pulled it from some theater somewhere in this country. They pulled it because people weren't buying tickets. So
Just interesting. I found that last part very interesting where he says, did you watch my acceptance speech? And she said, no. I'm like, oh my God. I'd really like to see a true documentary on her and Trump and really the real life behind the scenes. But I'm sure this is all just lipstick on a pig, so to speak, Not to call her a pig, but her husband, I wouldn't, whatever.
Yeah, well, you know what? Before you read, Jim, because I know you want to go to our commenters, you know what we want you to do? We want you to take your phone. We want you to use that camera, and we want you to weigh in on Detroit Black. Okay, Jim, go ahead.
We're gonna have a party if Melania is advertising on Detroit Black and White.
Right.
I want to get to our viewers. I kind of have an outrage. It's not really outrageous, but I want to get to our viewers because they made some great comments. Allan, you should make one. You have all the information. Terry McCrimmon. Sheila says, no, thank you. Jay, RW7. Think Melania is one of Putin's spy that watches Trump. That's an interesting take, Jay. Larry Barnett made some points, and I'd like to get back to Larry Barnett's points because it's my outrage. We don't care. Stop wasting our time with this foolishness. Thank you. Stephanie Jackson. Wonder if Trump will sue. Terry McCrimmon. Who cares? I'm looking at the 3 million documents released yesterday, Terry. That's going to take you a couple of years. They say Trump forced them to have oral sex in those files. Angela, good morning to you. Melania is probably setting up for her future. A lot of people speculate that she may be with another man before it's all over, and I think that's an interesting take. Mike Duggan, Timothy's asking about whether we should talk about the contaminated dirt. I think that's important. I don't trust Republicans, nor do I trust Democrats. Larry Barnett. Hazel Park Taekwondo, thank you for your comments. Call Girl movie. Bondi to deflect from Epstein information. I think that's, Jay, I appreciate that. We always think that now, right? ICE is in Minnesota because of the fraud. I'm not sure. Anything's possible. I'd rather see people coming in with cameras shooting videos than with guns. Duela, thank you, Duela. Kenneth Reed talks about Don Lemon and the ICE official being the head pastor. Well, I don't really think that has any bearing. That's a problem when private people believe because a pastor is somehow affiliated with a government agency that you should be. I have a problem with that. where do we draw the line, right? You know, we draw the line at a guy that likes the Boston Red Sox versus the Detroit Tigers, and we're gonna, you know, terrorize him because of it. I mean, I know it's a little different, but where do we draw the line? Distractions and excuses, Miss Sheila?
I have a little thing when you say where do we draw the line. I mean, the guy, you know, we have all this stuff going on where these people are being abused. You know, the protesters. Look, if protesters are throwing things or whatever, they should be arrested. You know, there's no question. But there's others who, I mean, when we saw the woman was shoved down to the ground, and then that nurse went to get her off the ground and pull her away. And so you know, here's a pastor in a church where ICE is, they've invaded. They're not going after, you know, what are they doing out there? They're not going after, you know, who they're supposed to be, the bad criminals or something like that. Now they're just dealing with protesters and stuff like that.
But he's preaching. He's preaching, Allan. He's not representing ICE. He's representing.
No, I understand that, but you know, he's probably not criticizing ICE either and saying this is our community. We can handle this. It's not to say that they shouldn't arrest people who are there illegally, but the way it's being done and the brutality of just the roughness of it, they're not, you know, they don't have total immunity to do whatever they want, just like police officers. I mean, your department, you didn't allow people to, you know, rough up people and, you know, and beat the shit out of people. And there was a protocol there, and I'm sure you took action if somebody was outside the lines, but these guys have no lines, you know. So
you know what, I want to weigh in. Jim, go ahead and do your
I want to finish up with a couple.
Richmond says, right, Vanessa, it's the FACE Act, but his actions doesn't fit that. He was covering the protest, not protesting. Well, covering the protest to me is not asking a member of the church. I'm always going to be a lawyer, okay? It's not asking a member of the church, hey, how do you feel about your pastor being, you know, a part of ICE? That is not covering the protest.
No, you can ask that. That's what the protest is about.
Listen, if we was in court, this is what we would do. We'd be boxing back and forth. I'm not saying that he could not, but what I am saying is that covering the protest, or is it basically interfering with somebody that is worshiping? I'm just saying, for argument's sake, that could be the argument.
I'll say this. I was in federal court one day. A Detroit cop, when I was at the Detroit News, we were in federal court. A Detroit cop was arrested for robbing banks. He ended up he was a crackhead. So the man's father was there, and the man's brother there. The man's brother was a sheriff's deputy. And I went up to the father in a very orderly way outside the courtroom, and I said, sir, I'm Allan Lengel from the Detroit News. Could I ask you a question? And the brother, who was a sheriff's deputy, stepped in between and shoved me. And I shoved him back. And I said, hey, your father is entitled to just tell me no, and I'll respect that. You don't have a right to push me. And so if people don't want to answer a question like that, I mean, the whole protest was about your pastor is an ICE agent or official or whatever. Does that matter? Are you okay with that? And someone say, get away. I don't want to talk to you. And that's, you know, for most reporters, I don't see any reporters saying, well, no, you need to answer me. They'll be like, okay, I respect that. But I also, under the First Amendment, respect the right to be able to ask people questions that may be uncomfortable. And if they're like, get the hell out of here. I've had people tell me to go fuck myself, you know, when I've asked them questions, and I respect that. And I say, okay, I'm sorry. Back away.
They were in the middle of a church service, Allan. He didn't ask him as he was getting in his car in the parking lot.
Well, we don't know that. We don't know when they asked them that.
Well, it's on tape.
Well,
it's on tape when they went in there to tell the people who he was.
Yeah, well, in the service, my impression, I saw some interviews after the whole thing was over, and I saw Don Lemon interviewing people. If you see it was happening during the service, I mean, that would be wrong. That would be disrespectful to the service. I would never do that. What, in the middle of a service, go, excuse me, can I pull you over? You go to city council meetings and you cover that. You might afterwards go up to somebody and say, excuse me, can I ask you a few questions? If they say, no, I don't want to talk to you. That's the end of the story. But if that is the circumstance where they start pulling people out during the service while it's still going on, and he's disrupting that, it's wrong. I don't know if it's criminal, but it's wrong.
Hey, D. Hughes, thank you. Can I go into a temple to protest Israel? I think that's a bad idea, D. I think you made another comment I'd like to talk about. Hazel Park Taekwondo. Mr. 1213, you asked if I walk into your house uninvited, am I trespassing at that point? I used a bad example, Mr. 1213. That's on me. I'm talking about a place that's open to a Jets Pizza, right? If you go in there and fight them over it, they have to tell you to leave. I'm talking about a building that's open to the public. And I used a poor example, and that's on me. Sorry about that. It was a violation of the religious rights, Stephanie Jackson. Our government is being dismantled defending illegals. Larry Barnett, I want to talk a little bit about some of these things. Maybe it's time to get a peacemaker out, Terry McCrimmon. I think I know what he's talking about. It's trespassing. You're not there to worship or unauthorized activities. That's Stephanie. Why are we sitting back? Our government is being overrun defending illegals. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Don Lemon was interviewing parishioners and one of the pastors. Detroit probate judge going to jail, D. Hughes. It was disrespectful, and your right to protest infringes on my right to worship. That is intimidation, violating that pastor's right to support ICE or whatever.
I'm not arguing that protesters shouldn't be arrested. What I'm arguing is that the media who's covering the protests should not have been arrested. So,
I was thinking, I'm not outraged, so I don't want to be outraged, but I want to, when things happen, we want to know why they happen, right? Regardless of what it is. And when Allan made a comment on the last show that I thought was interesting, and I thought about it. He made a comment, I was listening, Allan, that said, we're talking about Donald Trump and that people need the whole puzzle completely solved before they move forward. And I think what you were saying was Donald Trump is Donald Trump, and people are finally figuring out who he is. But I want to say, who are we? And I want to go in a little different direction. I want our viewers to think about this. They may not like it again, but this is what I said. Go ahead, Vanessa.
No. I'm sorry. I was responding, but go ahead.
Go ahead. But I said this a few months ago, and some people agreed, some people didn't agree, and you're welcome to disagree. But I want to go back to why Donald Trump's president. And I think we need to think about this. We need to think about how we arrived at Donald Trump. This isn't. I'm not indicting anybody, but I'm going to tell you why some of the reasons I think we arrived at Donald Trump on a second term. And I like both of your opinion. I like our viewers' opinion. And I said we had a taste of communism during COVID, and that's not an indictment. I'm just making a comment, and I'm going to give you a couple examples of why we have Donald Trump. Nancy Pelosi getting her hair cut when you couldn't get your hair cut. Forced injections on our military officer. Rubber bullets being shot. Telling you have to stay in your house and getting on a private jet and going to Florida and telling you can't.
We're talking about hypocrisy there more than.
Well, that's fine. You can make that point, and that's great. Governors partying in public. Our governor and the governor of California. Snitch lines to call on your neighbor if there's too many people in your house. And the one that anointing a president of the United States, right, without a democratic process. And the last one, the one that's personal to me and the one that hurts me more than anything is, I have two they're both gone now. But you know what? I had to visit my parents through glass in the wintertime, all right? My dad was in one assisted living and my mother was in another one. My mother got sick. She got sick with COVID. She was in a rehab center and they sent her up to Southfield. And you know who they sent those people? You know who they sent to Southfield? About 150 people that they thought were going to die of COVID. They were all infected with COVID. And they were forced into this nursing home in Southfield and nobody was allowed in. It was like a prison. So my question is,
I've got some response to that.
I'm glad you do. But my question is, I am not indicting. My only point is, how did we end up with Donald Trump? And in 2024, the facts are that the people felt that Donald Trump was a better pick than who the Democrats were putting forth. So my question is, how did we end up here? Not it's a bad thing, it's a good thing. I want to.
Well, all right. First of all, Jim, the pandemic happened in March. It started in March 2020. Guess who was president then? It was Donald Trump. So so that's one thing. I mean, obviously, look, different states had different things. I think, did we do some things wrong with COVID? Of course we did things wrong, but we were using what limited, it was a new virus. We were using what limited information we had to try. We forget there were refrigerated trucks outside of hospitals, outside of funeral homes, because there were so many people dying. We were trying to figure out how to put a stop to all the mass deaths that were happening. Did we do everything right? Was the mask, the 6 feet thing? We don't know. We tried to do the best we could guess at it. Why didn't Florida have it? When you're outdoors, it's warmer outdoors and stuff like that. You have different things. Was there hypocrisy? Did Whitmer, did Newsom, did they do things that were hypocritical? But I think, look, people get frustrated. People are frustrated with the inflation. Labor, people didn't want to work after. There were a lot of people who said, I don't need to work. I realize this, or, getting supplements or whatever. We had a situation, so we had high inflation. People had to start paying, the pizzeria, Moot's Pizzeria started paying people $22 an hour because you couldn't get people to work. And guess who pays for that? And guess what? The prices haven't come down, and they're still going up. I mean, I go to Myers. It used to be when I go to Myers on like Jefferson in Detroit there, I could get a lot of groceries. And now I get sometimes I get small groceries and it still costs the same amount of money. I think people get frustrated, and Trump offered hope. I'm going to end inflation on day one. I'm going to end the war in Ukraine on day one. People like that. People want solutions, and they think a businessman who speaks with authority is going to take care of stuff. But,
So I'm going to weigh in. I think there's a little bit of both. A little bit of truth to both of your stances, but let's talk about the parties. You have the Democratic Party, who totally dropped the ball. People are tired. First of all, so a lot of people sat home. A lot of people was like, I'm not even participating in this BS. One, two. The Democratic Party lost its way. What is the message? The message was, listen. Everybody knows I'm a Black woman. Everybody knows I'm a proud Black woman. Everybody knows I belong to a sorority. To tell people, because you are, this is what the Democratic Party did. One, this is going to be your nominee. No process or nothing. Everybody else has to go through a process. No process. Two, what's the messaging? What was the message? You covered everything, but a lot of people, and I'm talking about Black people, feel like they're left out. Listen, I've said to you, Allan, a lot of Black people are very conservative on Sunday morning. Some of them messages that the Democratic Party card out, people weren't buying it. People weren't buying the fact that, because you need to, and I'm not one of them necessarily. And what I mean by that is, people were offended. I know people who said, I'm not voting for Miss Harris just because she's a Black woman and she is a member of a sorority. As a matter of fact, there was a lot of people who said, wow, isn't it convenient that she's Black now? Because before she wasn't. She said she was Indian and Asian or whatever the case may be. The bottom line is, people are sick and tired of the hypocrisy. People were sick and people decided, listen, we don't like the candidate. We're not buying it. We're not buying the message. We're going to sit this one out. And there are people, I've talked to people who have said, you know what? I'm glad it happened. I'm glad he is the president, not because he's the best person in the world, but because the United States needs to wake up.
Oops, I'm sorry.
And no one's going to argue that Donald Trump handled COVID correctly. No one's making that point. The point is he handled it miserably. I'm not going to argue that. I'm just asking how we ended up this way. And somebody made a comment about white people voting, and I forget who it was. Larry Barnett says both political parties sold out to all things illegals. That's another issue. He made a campaign promise about illegals, and he's following up on his campaign.
But you know what? He also sabotaged. There was the senator from was it Louisiana or Oklahoma who had a bipartisan bill to beef up the borders and stuff like that. And Trump said, no, don't do it. It was like, I saw that as the equivalent of Nixon telling Vietnam, don't reach a peace agreement. When I get in office, we'll do a better one. Well, tens of thousands more Americans got killed. I wanted to address Stephanie, is it Stephanie Jackson? Somebody who said they're insulting us by, that men can be women or whatever. Here's my feeling about that is that I think, the whole thing about whether, transgender should play in sports. And so I think that's a fair debate. I don't know. I see the arguments on both sides, and I think it's a fair debate to bring up and stuff like that. But to demonize what they did, to demonize transgender people, I can't help but go back and, to when my parents, my mother was in Auschwitz, and I can't help but see when they were killing people just because they dehumanized them. They killed the Jews, they killed homosexuals, they killed gypsies, they killed Catholics, only because who they are. And so when we dehumanize transgender people and treat them lesser than us, then we can, make comments like that and try to, make them demonize them as, look, these people, have taken a tormented path. It's not the easiest path to become transgender and just reach that stage. I think it's difficult. And for us to really treat them like when they were running ads where Donald Trump would be like, in 2024, it'd say, Donald Trump, Kamala's for she and they, Donald Trump's for you, and trying to dehumanize people who are anything but, straight white Christians. I just have a problem with that. So
back to a couple. Go ahead, Vanessa.
I get where you're going, Allan. I understand your point, but the fact of the matter is, his message resonated with people.
It did, absolutely.
And I think that's where Stephanie is going. She's not saying that, listen, you need to demonize people or that we have a problem with transgender. His message resonated with us. Listen, some people feel like, listen, you transgender, fine, grand, and dandy, but don't force it down my throat. That's what you want to do. That's what you do. That's what you do in your house. This is how you live. But don't make it seem as if, don't demonize me because I'm not with it. And I think that a lot of people felt like the party was doing that.
I think the party was trying, and maybe whatever, normalizing them as people. And maybe, maybe people saw that. I interviewed a guy on Warren there, and there's I-75 the day of the election. And, I asked him, I said, why Trump? Here's a black man. He said, I'm voting for Trump. And I said, why Trump? And he kind of sheepishly looked at me and said, the transgender thing, that really bothered me.
So messaging is,
but it's, there's a difference between forcing it. I agree with you. It shouldn't be forced on there, but it's also, it's sometimes playing to some people's fear of the unknown, of somebody being so different that we're so weirded out by it or whatever. We don't want to deal with it. It's like, we're scared. I lived in an apartment building in DC once. I was standing at the elevator, and there was a woman with long hair, shapely figure. And I was standing behind and turned around, and a very deep voice said, oh my God, the elevator is so slow. And I was a little bit like, oh yeah. But a person's a human. And I know that person had torment. She got in the elevator one day and come back from an AA meeting and told me how tormented she went to the AA meeting. And they said, no, this is for men. You need to go there. And she went there. And then they said, no, this is for women. You need to go over there. There's it's a tough road, and the rejection by parents. A lot of parents don't want to accept that. I saw at the Dally in the Alley, a guy was speaking on stage talking about the torment of him being, transgender, and how his parents kicked him out of the house and all that stuff. So I agree, it shouldn't be forced on people, and because so anyways, I agree with you on that. But
go ahead, Jim.
So Mike Bunch says military's always been required. Yes, Mike Bunch, 3443. I understand that, and induction. We're talking about during the chaos of COVID and forcing, colonels that have been in the military for 30 years and firing them because, they were unsure about the vaccine. That's more what I was referring to. The majority said yes to Trump, D. Hughes, and here we are. Thank you for that comment, D. It's as simple as that. Jay, I'm not defending Donald Trump's behavior under COVID under any circumstances. I'm not talking about behavior. I'm talking about where they were leading us and how people felt about it. I'm not talking about me. I'm asking the question. Allan made a great point that he thought people were closing the circle. I'll use closing the circle on Donald Trump. But before they closed the circle on Donald Trump, they realized after his first term that he was no good and picked Joe Biden, they did it twice, right? They reelected this guy, and somebody had made a point about black and white people. I'm trying to find it, but here's the truth of the matter. There's some black people that voted for Donald Trump, and he won by a razor-thin majority, both the Electoral College and the popular vote. So there were black people out there voting for Donald Trump. Yeah, I understand it's a small amount, but
some of our black voted for Donald Trump. Some of our black viewers voted for Donald Trump. Terry McCrimmon, I want us to address that. He said, me either, Jim. I'm not outraged with Don Lemon saga. I'm more outraged with the principals at Cass Tech, Berkeley High, and Hazel Park for instructing their students to protest against federal law enforcement. You guys want to weigh in on that?
Go ahead, Allan.
I'm not that familiar with how it was presented and stuff. So I'd be totally speculative. I'm sure during the Vietnam era, there were probably some teachers at high school that Adolph and I went to were probably anti-war, and I'm sure maybe individually. I don't remember anyone ever telling us as a group like get out there and protest. So I don't know the circumstances of it. So I don't know.
And I would just say this: you lose the effect of protesting when you're doing it for a reason other than what you're protesting for. If that makes sense.
I'm not versed on these high school principals encouraging the students to go and protest, but I would think that they had to get permission from the parents for the kids to go out there and do that. So. Are
you just using people?
Terry says he has a problem with it. I understand it. I really do understand it. And like you said, Jim, are you using people? There was a comment on here about, it was something about the protest. But I'll get back to it. Do we need to shoot to a commercial before we?
Sure, let's take a quick one.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
We're back, Detroit in Black and White, our Saturday morning's edition. We want to thank everybody that has joined in. We thought somebody was going to use this QR code and weigh in. But if you decide that you want to be shy on Saturday morning because you still got your bonnet on your head or you still got your pajamas on and you drinking your coffee, you said, nah, I'll pass. I'll just make a comment in the comment section. We thank you for doing that. We're going to thank you in advance for liking, subscribing, and sharing, telling all your friends about the great show on these YouTube streets. We thank you in advance for catching us on all the social media platforms. I am going to ask you guys to do a favor before we close out. We still got some time before we close out. I need you guys to put a heart in that chat, acknowledge Lady T. She's recovering, but she still has our back in Detroit Black and White. And also put a heart in the chat for Adolph, because, you know, he's been very transparent about his health journey. He's doing well, but it's still a journey. So I want you guys to show our people some love. All right, go ahead. I don't know who was talking.
Kenneth Reed has said, I miss Saturday mornings at McShane's, which I think McShane's was just great, but there were some technical difficulties with sound and some stuff like that. But it was I love the setting there. I think we all did.
Thank you all for your powerful message back to our friend Teresa and my colleague for more than 30 years. Thank you for the great show, Janet. Thank you, Janet, for participating. Mr. Duckett, we're glad you made it. Usually you weigh in a little earlier. Get their old self out there. Don't use children. Miss Sheila. Thank you, Miss Sheila. That's a fact. You have to believe what you're protesting in. There's no value in going out there and protesting for someone else's beliefs. Kenneth Reed, our good friend.
I think most people who go protest because they believe in it. I don't hear too
You believe that now?
I mean, Trump is trying to, you know, the administration is trying to say, oh, these are professional protesters who are getting paid. I mean, there's no evidence of that. You know, I mean, Pam Bondi is saying, oh, you know, the signs all look uniform, and this, you know, and the spelling is like, well, you know, forgive the educated people for spelling their signs correctly.
Hey, Tracy. Sorry, Alan, go ahead.
No. I just, you know, I mean, until there's some real evidence of that, of people getting paid, you know, by whatever, by foreign entities or whatever it is, they're trying to make it, you know, I can't say, you know, absolutely not one person is getting paid, but I'm very, very skeptical of that. I know No King's Day, I dozens and dozens of friends were out there who I promise you were not paid a dime to be out there and believed in what they were protesting.
I like Trump's mission, and I hope he succeeds, D. Hughes. Well, what I think was really interesting, over in Europe, they were protesting and flying flags and no kings, no kings. And I thought, well, isn't there a king in England? Isn't there a king in Norway? Is there a king in Sweden? Yeah, it seems like Europe doesn't have any problem with kings, but
not ruling the kings don't rule the country.
But there are kings.
They're more symbolic.
Yeah, I get it, but I think it's interesting that, you know, we would be arguing about no kings in Europe.
The king of England is not running. You know,
Dominique, thank you.
Britain.
You're going to talk to the principal on Monday. I'd like to be in that room when you talk to their principal, Dominique.
Barnett made a point which is interesting. He said, not heard anything. He said, what is not heard anything from the NAACP on many issues. Now they come out defending illegals.
Yes.
I think it's interesting because I saw the head of the NAACP in Minnesota on television yesterday, and then the chapter here in Detroit had a press conference, and clearly there was a march. I just think it's interesting because there are some other things that's going on. If you want to talk about the injustices that's done with the illegals, let's talk about the injustices that's being done to legals, people who have been born here. Let's talk about the injustices right here in the city of Detroit when you have people who don't have a place to stay. Let's protest that. Let's protest the fact that over 50% of people that live in the city of Detroit live in poverty. Let's protest the fact that I think the state of Michigan, when we talk about education, we're like 40 something, like 46 or 47. Those things need to be addressed. But again, this is a hot button issue. Is being televised all over the world. I just find it interesting. I'm not going to dog them out for protesting, but I too, like Larry, I find it very interesting.
By the way, I think the poverty rate, when you talk about 50%, applies to children who are, you know, one family has multiple children. The poverty rate is somewhere between 31 and 35% in Detroit. But
you know, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Just
Okay, go ahead, Jim. Okay,
I'm sorry, I thought you were done, Alan.
I still stand on it. I
yeah,
still.
yeah. I mean, it's still a problem. I'm not minimizing. But
Huge. It's not a. It's not a. It's a huge problem.
it's a huge
See,
problem.
this is
Absolutely.
somebody who worked in the juvenile system as a guardian ad litem and as an attorney. So I saw the parents who had 10 or 10 children with respective fathers who could not keep the heat on, who could not get their kids back and forth to school for whatever reason.
Right.
So listen, and I do know that people play with numbers as well. We all know that. So to me, if it's 30, 40, 50, if it's 10, it's too much. And all I'm saying is, if you're going to march about illegals, as Larry says, if you want to march about that, and I don't think that's what they're saying that they're marching about. They were marching about the protesters who lost their lives. I think that's what
and arresting U.S. citizens too. I mean, when you talk about U.S. citizens, they're arresting people who have green cards and who are actual citizens. They've been arresting them, and
so my question is, if they're arresting citizens, are they arresting citizens because they destroy property? Are they arresting citizens because they tell them to stand back behind the line? Are they arresting citizens because of disorderly conduct? What are they arresting them for?
Well, they could be for some of that, but they're also arresting citizens because they see they have brown skin and they take them. They arrest them and then they release them. They showed an old man in Minneapolis where they were taking him out of a house, like I think he was in his underwear. And he was an American citizen. And then they were like, oops, they took him back. They got the wrong guy or whatever. But I mean, it's all of what you say. And then people who are they're just picking people off the street and saying, you look Hispanic. Where's your documentation? A lot of people are, if they don't have their passport or their green card on them, are getting picked up.
Can I address Dominique really just briefly? Dominique, I don't remember the name of the nursing center. It was around 13 in Evergreen. I can't remember the name of it, but I didn't want to pass on that question. She had an important question, and I apologize for taking so long to get to you.
I'm trying to think. Was it American? No, it wasn't American House. You said 13 at Evergreen. I'm trying to think what's on.
It may have been on 13 Mile near Evergreen. I cannot remember the name. They were confused, and my mother thankfully survived that encounter up there.
And
at the time.
I was going to say about the pandemic and stuff like that. I mean, Dr. Fauci used what information he had, which originally in 1918, when they had the flu pandemic where millions and millions of people died, that was one of the things they did, is tell people, they isolated people. They told people was that they didn't have much to go on, and so they were trying to figure it out as they went. But people were dying left and right. We were scared shitless when it first came. We were like, find an answer.
I agree with that, Alan, but that's how you end up with a Castro or a Tito or a Stalin.
Well,
when you surrender to the government because they have the only answers and you don't, that's a challenge for the people that voted in the last election, apparently.
Well, you're also we have regulations with guns and driving and stuff like that. When people are putting when we see somebody's got COVID and they're just like, oh, I'm going to go to the store now and spread COVID, and then we see deaths, what do we do about it? I'm not saying clearly everything we did was not right, but we tried to do what was right based on what limited information we had. And Dr. Fauci's a scientist, and for people to demonize him, I think is ridiculous. So.
All right.
My question was, how do we end up here?
Look, I'm not mad at you for taking up for your cousin, Allan.
Cousin Fauci.
All right. D. Hughes, we're gonna wrap up this show on 2 comments. D. Hughes says she's respect people lawful adult personal choices, but do not force your personal choices on me. If you are a swinger, that's your choice. Don't force it on me. I say amen to that. And Larry says, Black people are wise not to allow ourselves to become illegals and ICE. Stay out of the mess. So we're going to end on that. We're going to end on that. We're going to encourage everyone to have a wonderful weekend. Be safe. Listen, y'all know what we want you to do. We want you to come back and watch us on Detroit Black and White on Wednesday evening. But before you do that, you may want to join Detroit Black and White Presents Reality Strike on Monday evening from 8:30 to 9:30 with Eric Brown. You also want to make sure that you keep on notice that, guess what? Allan Lengel has his show the week that comes on every Friday morning. So Allan is doing double duty. He's doing quadruple duty, right?
4 podcasts a week.
Right. So listen, we love you. We thank you. We love the participation. Keep it up. Tell your people about the greatest show on these Detroit YouTube streets. Is keep educating us. Thank you so much. Bye.
Hey, Ira.